Hello. First of all, thank you so much for all of the positive feedback about the, what's it called, a vlog, the video podcast that I did last week. I got some really, really lovely comments. It's nice to be back in contact with you. Like I say, I kind of have done these things as a kind of a therapy where I come into I'm in my basement at the moment and I just talk to you, or I just talk. I want to talk a little bit today about a subject that is a bit of a touchy thing. I want to do it in a way that doesn't offend people or insult people, or not too much anyway. I don't mind doing that if I think it's necessary, but I don't think there's any reason to go there at the moment. So the title of the podcast is Competitions, Do We Need Them? And before we go any further, I think first of all to say to all of our American viewers that this is largely based on my findings of European trombone competitions. I think in Europe, competitions have been seen as a way of launching people's careers. You know, violinists, pianists, winning the Tchaikovsky competition or whatever, was it the Queen Sophia or something like that. And there's been a particular obsession with competitions, I think, in Russia and in France. They're the two, a strange connection between France and Russia very often. And it's been really an obsession. And you look at so-and-so's career was launched by, this, that, or the other. And so let's look now at the trombone players who have had their solo careers launched by solo competitions. No, I can't think of any. I can think of someone who got a teaching job, one person who got a teaching job largely because they won a competition. But that's about it. As to launching a career, I think there's something, as far as the format is concerned, at least, that needs to be looked at. I'd like to discuss that a little bit here. In principle, I'm not against competitions. It's not really a very British thing. I remember Dennis Wick saying to me in 1988 or 89, it's the Munich competition this year, you should do it. I think you'd win. And for various reasons back then, and the constitution of the jury, I'm not sure whether I would have. But that's not really an English thing. I said, well, look, I'm first trombone in the London Symphony. What's the point? And that's pretty much the answer that Peter Moore just gave me when I suggested he did the Munich competition. He said, well, why? What's the point? And so I think very much we've reached a stage in competitions in Europe where the competitions are notable by the absentees. They're notable for the people who are not taking part rather than the people who are taking part. Those who are already establishing careers and moving on are not doing it. And also the juries seem to be notable by their absentees, by the people who are not there. If we look back historically, I think my friend and hero, Michel Becker, is obsessed with competitions. I think French people are obsessed with them. Even though we look at the data is back in, we're not producing soloists. French people tend to be obsessed with competitions. I personally don't understand it. And I think one of the biggest problems that we face is that we're swimming in our own pool of whatever you can think of. But we are swimming in our own soup. That we have trombone players listening to other trombone players. Now the question is, why are we not producing soloists? They think, why are there not more trombone soloists? Well, really? You want to know why? Because trombone players are picking them out. I am constantly surprised because I've done different format competitions. I am in a purely trombone jury. I'm very often surprised at trombone players who they like a certain player. And if you're on a jury with a lot of musicians, let's say, conductors, pianists, because that does happen where you get a few different, they come to me and say, I love this one. This one is, wow, what a musician. This is, I could listen to him or her all day long. This is just amazing. And then they go, but tell me, why did you like this one? What was it? It just, I've had a recent case of that where even I have to say in my own criticism of myself, as a trombone player. I'm a trombone player. I listen to someone play the trombone, and if you like the hand-working skills, the way they can play everything, and I'm influenced by that, perhaps far more than I should be. And then somebody who comes along and is incredibly expressive and musical and soloistic, but perhaps displays some technical weaknesses, it's like, maybe I don't see them quite as favorably as perhaps a pianist would, who wouldn't notice the slight impurity in the sound, or wouldn't notice some of the ungainly articulation, shall we say, or the fact that maybe the high note didn't speak the way they wanted to. That doesn't worry a violinist or a singer or a pianist. But where do we want to live? Where do we want to operate? Do the blue-haired grandmothers care if you miss a high note? Probably not. They want you to speak to them. They want you to entertain them. This is the arena into which we wish to go. We wish to go into the arena of conductors, of violinists, of pianists, of singers, and of the ordinary listening public. They're not interested whether that's not the standard interpretation. As I was once said, one of my students, feedback I think is a very interesting thing. I usually advise, first of all, I tell my students not to do competitions. They don't listen to me. I think Stefan Schultz in Berlin has got his students under more control than me, because I don't see any of his students doing the competitions either. Sort of notable by their absence, going back to what I was saying earlier. I say, no, there's no point. Don't do it. You're not gonna. You maybe. And one of them said, "Have you seen the prize money for that? It's 20,000. I'm doing it. You're gonna give me 20,000?" And he's like, "Okay, go and do it." But some of the feedback I've had back is like that. This was not the standard interpretation of the Tomasi. Really? Is that where we are? This is a trombone competition. This is a solo competition. Where's your vibrato? Really? So if you play with vibrato, you're a soloist. Really? If you use vibrato, you're expressive. Really? Is that where we are? That's your criteria. I was missing the trombone character. Really? You mean that sort of horrible, nasty, direct, aggressive sound that's called the trombone character? Is that where we are? See, all of these things don't occur to musicians. And furthermore, I would say, and this is, for those of you who are not aware, I have a lot of students in orchestral jobs, really a lot. First of all, because I get amazing students. They're good when they come in. I admit it. I have a luxurious life in my teaching. They're really, really amazing when they come in. And then I try and make them a bit more amazing when they go out. But I often have conversations where they say, the trombone section in this orchestra are going to want to hear this. For an orchestral audition, I said, really, that's interesting. Okay, good. Well, just to let you know, there are probably 27 people on the jury, 3 of whom will be trombone players. They all have votes. The other 24 are musicians. So don't take too seriously what you think the trombone section wants to hear. I mean, we try and accommodate. But never forget that in the end, music always wins in an orchestral environment like that. And, in the concert, with the concert going public. So it might sound like I'm criticizing colleagues who sit on juries. Actually, I'm not. I'm just saying we have a very blinkered view when we look at it through the eyes or the ears of a trombone player. I know for a fact we've just had a whole swathe of competitions, which is why I'm doing this podcast. First of all, congratulations to all of the winners. And actually, I was on a jury in September, and before I gave the results, I just said, look, there are some very, very fine trombone players who are not on this list of finalists, who I can tell you right now, you're going to have amazing careers. It's going to work out really well for you. But these are the results. So there's just been this. So congratulations to the winners. Really, it's a strange and unique phenomenon playing in trombone competitions where it almost has its own language that is unrelated to what you would do in an audition, or even really to speak to an audience. You have to do a kind of dressage, you know, that thing where horses go 3 steps forwards and then walk over a log and then turn left and that kind of thing. So the feedback, it's like I say to people who are the external experts on exams for my students. I know my students, I understand them really well. When I get feedback from a jury, I'm finding out about the jury, not about my students. I know about my students. So competitions in many ways are there to find out. If you go for feedback, we're discovering the knowledge of the jury. We're finding out about the jury, not about the player, really. That's not to say that all feedback is bad. I always say, only ever go and take feedback from someone from whom either A, you would like to take a lesson, or B, from someone to whom you aspire in their career. And I think when we look at certainly a lot of the recent juries, it's been a bit strange. And I'm sorry, look, I have been asked to sit on these juries and I say no, because integrity does not allow me, by and large, to sit on a jury where, as they say in English, I have a dog in the race. One of my students is taking part. And I know, yes, I know, people say, but you can't vote for your own student. No, but you can vote against somebody else's. So have I seen instances of that? I may have had my suspicions. One can't put it beyond that. Did you like the edit there? And it's human nature. It's human nature. And so by the way, all of you who are organizing competitions, if you're watching this, when I've retired from teaching, please ask me. I'd love to sit there. Old and, you know, one cannot avoid the conflict of interest. I was raised to believe in 2 things. One was fairness, and the other was appearance of fairness. And for that reason, so many juries appear compromised. And it's not fair on the winner. It's really not fair on the winner. So that's one of them. Sort of my main problem with competitions of late are, A, they're not musically relevant. They're not being judged by a broad base musical opinion. Conductors, soloists, even artists' agents. If we want to provide a platform for a trombone soloist, then ultimately they're going to go on to become soloists. They're going to need an agent. Put an agent on the jury. Pick an agent who you think, actually, it'd be really amazing if the winner of our competition was looked on favorably by this very good artists agency company, because that would be a really cool thing. So that's the one thing. The other compromise is, I think, the blinkers. The trombone players looking at things, and I don't care how many great trombone players you tell me there are. We are, and as I've said, I blame myself. We look at things through the trombone details. That's the other thing. And the other thing is the impartiality. And again, I'm not attacking anybody in a jury. I don't know whether many of you are aware, but another one of my, at the very least, one could call it a very serious interest, is in wine, particularly the wines of Burgundy. And I go to wine tastings. I have received several honors for wine and the wines of Burgundy. When one judges a wine, one judges its qualities. The quality of the fruit, the quality of the acid, the quality of the tannin, its potential balance and longevity. All of this stuff about I can smell, a raspberry bush that was just walked past by a hedgehog. That's nonsense. You judge the real wine critics will give you, it's qualities. And I didn't say it, ultimately, yes, the quality, but the qualities, the different aspects of it. They will give the faithfulness to the earth from which it comes. They will describe the producing aspects to it. They'll describe the quality of the nose, the mouth, and the finish. They will not say, this wine is from Chablis in France. I prefer Californian Chablis or Californian Chardonnays. This is a Merlot from the right bank of Bordeaux. I prefer Super Tuscan Merlots. They would be laughed out of court, but that's the thought process so often of trombone jurors. This person does not play the trombone in my style or in the style that I like. It's absurd, but that is the simplistic thought process that I've seen so many times. We like trombone players who sound, yeah, but no, is it good? Is it a good sound? Is it a good articulation? Is the rhythm correct? Is it musically appropriate? Whether it's your taste or not is neither here nor there. You're employed on a professional basis to give the assessment of the qualities of the musician who is in front of you. Not whether you like it or not. Competitions cannot be a matter of taste. If it is a matter of taste, it's in the last round. I think that's okay. And so what if a competition is this, that, or the other? It's a great preparation for the students. They have to work really hard at the repertoire and they'll get better in the process. This is the argument that I've heard made so many times, that it's about the preparation, it's not about the competition, which is a very sad way of looking at it, isn't it? Never mind the competition, but the preparation is great. No one will probably hear who you truly are in the competition, but you'll have got to become a much better player. I have seen instances of this, I have to say, with my players where it's like they've had to push themselves so hard with the repertoire that it has got them over bridges in their playing, has made big developments. I have seen this. However, I would say it's largely not the case. What I see from a limited experience of people taking competitions is there are people practicing repertoire that are years beyond them. They're trying to do things that they're not really capable, technically, and certainly not musically, of playing or approaching. And so because of that, it either reinforces bad technical issues that they have or creates new ones. I think the obsession with competitions is based around a few teachers. And the competitions are for the teachers, they're not for the students. Because as we've seen, they're not going on to become soloists. But I guess the teacher has the feather in the cap of saying my student won. I could say that. I don't. I've had students who won competitions. Big ones. That's honestly, when I have given feedback, I will disclose, I've said to several people, I really love your playing. You are an amazing performer. You are incredible. We need you. We really need you. Please learn to play the trombone. Because at the moment you put it on your face and you do not know what's going to happen. And as we all know, the worst thing is to stand on a platform and need to go to church to hope that it's going to go okay. We need to know, no, there are no guarantees, but we need to know that all things being well, it's going to work for us. It doesn't always work for us, as we all know. But I think that is another sort of like strike, if you like, against. It's the people who are allowed to do competitions. I was talking to Chris Galfit in the summer, the winner of the AID competition last year, and rightly so. And he's absolutely the right sort of person who should be doing competitions. He was, 28, something like that. He'd done the 4 years of boot camp in London, real serious basic training, the basics really working really well. Simple, but perfect, correct. And then he went to Germany, was set free for a year and won a job. It's absolutely the opposite of what I was just talking about. He was absolutely in prime condition to do it. So I think as teachers also, we have a bit of a responsibility. Yeah, if you do a competition, it's good to drive you on forward, but is it reinforcing problems or creating new ones? I've spent my entire life learning to appreciate people who play the trombone in a different way to me. I've had to work on it. I come from England. British trombone players think they have the best trombone style in the world, as do the French, as do the Americans. And we work to appreciate the language of others. I speak different languages as well. We learn to appreciate the language of other performers. And yet I see so often in competitions, no, we don't, that's not the way I. So that's why I have a problem with them from that point of view. Actually, I was just sitting on a competition jury recently in September in Düsseldorf, the Aeolus competition. I didn't really want to do it, but a really good friend and colleague said, "Yeah, we'll do this, we'll both do it, it'll be great, we'll have a wonderful time." And and then he backed out of it and left me with it. Anyway, I had a wonderful few days with my former colleague in Vienna, Dietmar Kübelberg. It was wonderful to sort of reconnect with him. And I found that really a very interesting and positive experience, because there were there was the director of the music school, and there was a conductor, and there were different instruments. There were tuba, trumpet, teachers, professors. So it was very interesting to get that slightly different, just even a slightly wider perspective on it, rather than just the trombone ones. There were trombone players that actually the trombone jury, if you like, particularly didn't favour. But the whole rest of the jury, they weren't noticing those nerdy trombone things that we would pick up. So it was a very, I have to say, very positive experience. And that may be a good way to go, to try and have trombone players on a clarinet jury, have trombone players or tuba players on a harp jury. Who knows, just so you get the general idea, the general perspective, So I hope that, I perhaps have raised a few questions as to the format of trombone competitions, and to how we can perhaps move forwards in a few, but without it seeming to be attacking those who either A, are organising them, because they're doing it for the best possible reasons, and those people who are on the jury, who genuinely feel they're doing the best, independent and doing the best job they possibly can. And I'm absolutely not questioning the integrity of those people. Really not. Actually, back to that situation of feedback. There's one. Joseph N. Alessi. When he sits on juries, which he occasionally does in Europe, I tell my students, go get some feedback from him. Go see what he says. And every time my students come back and I go, yep, interesting. Yeah. Every time. I've never heard that guy give one piece of feedback out of place. In fact, one student said to me recently, he was the only one on the jury who said something nice, who said was positive and nice. So I think the feedback is something that needs to be looked into as well, how it can possibly be given, rather than just, because, I know there are still some old-fashioned countries in the world where teaching is like the institution of corrections. You did this wrong, you did this wrong, you did this wrong. Yeah, brilliant, good. Yeah, people need to know what they need to do, not what they did do. They probably know what they did wrong before you did. So it's, this goes through everything in life. What do they need to do? How can they improve? How can they move forward? Like, this was wrong, So anyway, if you ever do a competition and Joe's on the jury, I think you can set your watch by that. It's pretty accurate stuff. Well, there we go. I would appear to have shot to pieces the current system of competitions, at least for the trombone. There's got to be some positive in this. I can't just sit here like a grumpy old man and this is not good and this is not, and Can't do that. There has to be a positive way out of this, doesn't it? But so how do we become a soloist if the route to it is not the current format of trombone competitions? How does it happen? Well, first of all, I think we have to define what I mean by a soloist. By a soloist, I mean somebody who is on a regular basis doing recitals for, who knows, 3,000 a concert, so dollars, pounds, euros, Swiss francs, whatever. They're all about the same these days anyway. Funny that. Whoa, amazing. Anyway, for recitals with trombone and piano in regular festivals, not in brass festivals, in regular festivals, and are regularly doing concertos with orchestras, for between 5,000 and 8,000 a concert. So that would be my definition. What is not by definition is somebody who is sponsored by an instrument company, which I am. Right? I have a very strong association with the company, and plays in brass festivals and trombone festivals. That's not really a solista internazionale, I would say. That's a different thing. So my definition of a soloist is someone who actually pays the bills by playing concertos and recitals on the trombone. So let's just clear that one up right away. There are a lot of people with 2 teaching jobs who call themselves soloists. I have 2 teaching jobs. I guess I'm a teacher who plays solos and conducts. When I was in the Vienna Philharmonic and the London Symphony, I was an orchestral player who played solos. So just to be clear on that, I'm not putting myself on any pedestals here at all. So that by definition is, for me, what a soloist is. So we've defined that, certainly in my opinion. And then let's look at how one becomes a soloist. First of all, one option is you have to be Christian Lindberg. That's a good option. You've got to have his never-ending drive, never accepting a refusal or the word no, just pushing and working and working and working and working. By the way, this is in praise of Christian Lindberg, not in criticism. You've got to have that drive, the business drive, to push, to make things happen, which he has done. And he doesn't sleep very much, and he never stops working, and he drives and he works the whole time. Full admiration. So that's one of the big qualifications. I very often say to students, let's look at the qualifications that we need to become a soloist. And it's amazing how few of the qualifications are actually about trombone playing or music. How you can market yourself, how you can make yourself appealing to conductors, to agents, how you can commission music, put business deals together, make that all happen. It's a lot of things that all come together at once, and not as many of them are actually based on playing the trombone or music as you might think. So that's another thing that for me is quite clear. So you've got to be on this crazy drive to, as Christian said, fight for your life, fight for your professional life, which doesn't come naturally to many of us, really. In fact, perhaps only one. And the other thing that you need to know about Christian as well, 10 years, he keeps saying to me, 10 years in an apartment in Stockholm with nothing apart from a wonderful wife and family. And then he left them for the motorbike concerto, as it was explained to me. And it took 10 years to make it work. That's determination. I think that's 10 years that most of us don't have, wouldn't be ready to give. The determination. I mean, everyone said, you're crazy. And he said, no, I'm going to do it. And he did it. So that's, if you want to be a soloist, you've got to be like Christian. That's one way of doing it. That's one way. Now let's look at who the people are who are actually working as soloists, who are playing concertos with orchestras. Who are they? Well, at the moment it's Joe. Joe's doing the Chick Corea concerto in lots of places around the world. Jürgen does quite a bit of it. Peter Moore, he's also doing quite a bit of that sort of stuff. And then on the periphery, you've got someone like me. I think Michel Becker used to do a lot of things back in the day in France. But let's look at who these people are. Joe Leslie, first trombone in the New York Philharmonic. Jürgen van Rijn, first trombone in the Concertgebouw. Peter Moore, first trombone in the London Symphony. Well, are they getting the solos because they're in those orchestras, or are those orchestras making it happen for them? Is it a side effect of that? Because if you look at Joe, if you look at Jürgen, they're having concertos commissioned for them by their orchestras. And and Peter's a fantastic young soloist, and the London Symphony are giving him lots of opportunities, which is amazing. Incidentally, I think enough time has passed now to be able to say this. When I left the London Symphony, Sir Clive Gillinson, the wonderful Sir Clive Gillinson, who was the general manager of the London Symphony at the time, he said, Ian, we don't want you to go to Vienna. We can't offer you any more money, but we can offer you concertos. We can commission pieces for you. We can have you in front of the orchestra the whole time. And now that, when I look at that, for me, it was not, I decided I was going to go to Vienna. But when I look back, if you think now the 23 years since I left the London Symphony, I wonder how many new concertos I would have been able to commission. And whether that would have propelled me in more of a soloistic direction, I don't know. But it would have been a heck of a base, a launching platform. So who are the people who are actually doing these concertos at a high level? They're orchestral players, and not only with their own orchestras. You see, it works like this. You play in an orchestra, and a conductor says, wow, that first trombone player is really cool. I like that. Why don't you do a concerto with me next time I come, or whatever? Or, hey, I'm doing a concerto. And then you get an invite somewhere else to go and do something with them. That's how most of my solo opportunities have come along, with a small number of conductors who have stood by me over the years. And so the way really to build a solo career at the highest level is to get the best possible orchestral job you can get, and be nice to conductors. When I think about it, it's when students come to study with me, when they walk through the door, actually even before that, when they say they want to study with me, I say, what do you want? What do you want to do in your life? What are your aspirations? And how can I help you? Because it's, whenever I take a student, it's my biggest consideration is whether I can help that person in front of me to fulfill their dreams. It's not about whether they're good enough to come into my class, or it's about whether I can do it for them, whether I can do it with them. And this sort of like equal partnership, this partnership that we enter into for 2 years or 3 years. Where do you want to be? Where do you want to work? What do you want to do? And they all, without exception, say, I want to play in an orchestra. Every now and then, someone will come along and say, I want to be a soloist, but it's very, very rare. But one that happens quite often is they say, well, I kind of want to do what you did and are doing. You know, I want to play in an orchestra and do concertos as well. So when we're looking at finding the players of tomorrow, the superstars of tomorrow, and giving them a hand, I think we should bear that in mind. Because so often now, auditions and competitions in Europe seem to be being won by different players. There are those that are very competition orientated and those that are very audition orientated. And of course, there's going to be the crossover, of course. But I think that the way forwards is to bear that in mind. I hope I'm only looking at facts, that's where the solo opportunities are happening. They're happening, first of all, in your own orchestra. And then as a knock-on, you're getting concertos commissioned and you're going to get taken by a conductor to a different orchestra or whatever. So, I mean, I did a competition a couple of years ago where the first round was you had to prove that you could earn your money in an orchestra. And I think that may be a good formula to try and grow, to try and develop as well. Because I do hear some people in competitions who, and don't get me wrong, I love it. I love the trombone. I love what they're doing. But I do think, I don't know how you'd get on with Mozart Requiem or Thievish Magpie or The Ride of the Valkyries, which is what we need. We do need that stuff to earn a living. And American players watching this are going to think, well, what's he talking about? Of course. But in Europe, there's this kind of, it's all a little bit confused, I think, at the moment. Anyway, those are my thoughts. I guess that was my sort of like criticism of what is happening. That was my suggestion as to what perhaps could happen. As an action as to what I am going to do, I don't have that planned yet. But those are my thoughts. We've come to the end of a competition season. There's been lots of them. And so I guess that's just my thoughts. Now, I did promise all the way through this podcast that I was going to go into a certain juicy situation in brass bands. And as you've seen, unusually for me, there's quite a few edits in this because it's quite a sensitive subject. And I genuinely don't want to step on anyone's toes and offend anyone. I really don't, because I do believe everyone's really giving their best and doing their best. And I did record a section on brass bands, but having looked at a social media stream, I think that's been pretty much covered. I think if you listen to this podcast, you will know what my feelings are on that matter. So please forgive me, I have not jumped into it. I think if I was more involved in brass bands, I probably would have. But I think there are plenty of other people doing that for us. So there we go. Those are my thoughts. Thank you very, very much for watching. It's really nice to be back in contact with you. I've got lots of ideas for new things to do. If you have any ideas for podcasts, please send me an email. Till then, enjoy your practicing.